All right, today we're doing a 1998 4R44E. We're just going to do the main housing assembly with all of the gear packs, bell housing, tail shaft, pump. We're not going to get into doing the valve body today. We're just going to do the rest of the assembly. So as you can see, I've got everything taken apart, cleaned up. And what I like to do once I get ready to start putting it together, I've already done all of my clutch disc packs. I've already stacked them together. I've already soaked them all. That is a key. Anytime you're doing new clutches in an automatic transmission, they need to soak in automatic transmission fluid. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and grab my last two bands out of the fluid. I like to throw those in a little container. Just let them soak them overnight. I've already done, like I said, the clutch packs. I've already done those. I've kind of stacked them together, but I will slide them apart so you can get a good look at them. So staged everything out kind of in the flow of the order of which way it's going to go together. So what we're going to start with is we're just going to go ahead and install the two solenoids on the outside. The one thing you'll notice about these, on the outside they do have stamped letters AB and BB. So just make sure when you're taking them apart that you keep them identified. And in this case, when I took it apart, AB was on the front. So the other thing I like to do, and you can see all the lube I've already got on all the gaskets, is trans lube on everything when you're putting it back together. It'll dissolve inside the fluid once everything's back on. So it's not going to hurt anything to be in your fluid. But I've already got everything lubed up, so all my O-rings are nice and lubricated. Should slide together pretty easily. Put it into place. Go ahead and press it down. Then you're going to take your snap ring. On the snap rings, you'll notice there's a little notch right here. When you're taking these apart, you really want that notch close to the end of the spring, but not right on it. So when I go to put it back together, I offset it just a little bit, and then I'll start sliding it back in. Go ahead and grab the screwdriver. And then you just kind of work your way around, pressing it in as you go. And once you get to the end, it snaps in. And then I just like to go around, make sure, get it good and seated. We'll do the next one. Like I said, I've already got them all lubricated, so it should be easy to put it together. Pop it in. Go ahead and set my snap ring in. Get it started. Start working with the screwdriver, just pressing it as you come around. Get it snapped in, then you can come back, just make sure it's nice and seated. All right, now that we've got that part in, I'm going to go ahead. Some people do it differently, but I like to go ahead. I install the tail shaft and the set gear and everything on the back end first before I get too far into it. The other thing you'll notice, your shaft right here, which is for your transmission fluid level dipstick, it doesn't allow you to sit flat. So I grab a couple of 2x4s. Allows me to rotate this up, and then I can set it down nice and flat. Allows me to work on the back end. All right, now we get to the back end. Go ahead and take our shaft, slide our parking gear assembly together, and we've got to get our bushing. So you'll notice on this bushing, it is somewhat of a keyed bushing. So if you look down inside here, you'll notice there are setups to where this will fit together, and it really only likes to fit one way. So the whole idea here is you're trying to get it together to where it sits down in there. Nope, dropped it in wrong. There it is. There we go. So get it dropped down in, it'll sit nice and snug in place, and it won't rotate itself around once those keyways are in the right spots. And then you can take the shaft, slide it down in here, make sure everything's already nice and lubed on it. Should be good to go there. Got our gasket. Go ahead and just set our gasket into place. Then you've got to get the parking brake lever in place. Often that's probably the biggest challenge people run into when they're trying to put these back together. So we've got the assembly that sits here: pin, spring, and engagement. Okay, the way this goes together, spring goes on the back side, turned that way, wrapped around and hooked. Actually, needs to be, yep. Then you got to catch it, bring it over, set it into place. All right. So if you didn't see it, I'll slide it back apart real quick, let you get a good look at it. The way I like to put it together to start with is I just bring it up here, takes the pressure off the spring because the spring's engaging back here, and then I bring the spring around, and then once I've got it held, then I can slide it back up into place, cradle everything into position. All right. The next part's the tricky part, where you got to get it in line with your shift lever here that engages your park. So where that shift lever, once it's into park, that raised lip comes up, presses that hammer out, that engages your park onto the output shaft. So when you come up with that, the other thing, I've already gone ahead, pressed in our new seals, bearings, everything's already pressed in on the tail cone. Come down nice and easy. And then you're going to see, when you have to come together, that spring-loaded engagement doesn't want to clear until you make it clear. There it goes. And just a little bit. There it goes. So that's always the hardest part about getting the tail cone on, is getting that alignment shaft for the engagement into place, because when that engages, that pushes that lever over. And then we get our screws for the tail cone. Always remember, your tag with your identifier goes right here on the bottom side. On this particular unit, all the screws are the same, except you've got one that has a separate nut for a bracket once it's installed. On this particular unit, it's the third screw around on the top side. Go ahead and get that one set in. And then all the rest of them are just the same bolts. Now when you run these down, if you're going to use an impact tool just to run them down, that's fine. If you've got electric ratchet, or if you just want to use a handheld, you don't want to run these down and put any torque on them, so I'm putting them on the minimum setting. All I want to do is run them down to get them to where they're touching, and then we'll torque them with the torque wrench. Alright, now with these, I need 17. These are going to torque out between 27 and 38 pounds. So we've already got the torque wrench set up. 32 pounds, foot-pounds right in the middle. So we'll just go ahead and set those. Actually, I think I can get these without the extension, make life a little easier. All right, got all of those in. Go ahead and take that nut, slide it back on so that you don't lose it whenever it's time to use and mount that bracket for a linkage connection inside the truck. All right, now we're ready to start stacking the inside. So I'll take it off of here, rotate it around, get it to lay down on its side. I try not to ever lay it on that shift lever. And then I put another little board up underneath it. That way I'm not putting pressure on anything else, and now these can come out of the way for the time being. All right, so now we're ready to start stacking everything together inside here. Got everything all put together. I've already checked the sprag on this, made sure everything was in good shape. As you can see, got a ton of lube on it from the trans lube that I've added to it. So you just take that, slide it down in there, set it down in place. Like I said, it is a sprag gear, so you should be able to turn it one way, but not the other way. So in this case, it turns that way, but it does not turn the other way. All right, that's how you know you're engaged on the sprag gear. Next thing we're going to drop in is the rear band. You'll notice this band's got two on one side, one on the other for the apply. These two are the set anchors. And if you look down on the bottom, you'll see those two set anchors down there. So we're just going to rotate that band around that way, slide it down in here. Slide it down into place. Take your screwdriver, gently slide it up against the two anchors. Once you've got those two anchors into place, you've got the option of going ahead, taking that piston, sliding it in to engage so it holds in place. And then you can see where that comes through down there in the video. You can see where that piston comes in and engages that band. Just to make sure that we've got a good engagement. We're not putting that cover on that piston right now until we go to do the valve body. But for right now, that's how we know that band stays into place. It's not going to move around or do anything. All right, now that we've got the base one in, now we got to get this one in. But you'll notice this assembly right here with this bearing, a lot of times that race will just slide off. So what you might want to do, go ahead and take your your trans lube, get a good bit of it on here, and you're almost kind of using it as a glue to help that seat together. And then that bearing just sits down on top of it, just like so. Okay? And then that, as you'll see, it's kind of, once you get that lube on there, it stays in place really well. Slide it down in, make sure you get a good cradle. That should spin in both directions, engaged with the shaft. Okay? Now, we've got to get down in there, get our snap ring in, but we want to make sure that our groove is nice and clear. Alright, let's very tight tolerance, so you got to make sure you got all the slack taken out of it. Now this, I tend to modify my pliers to give me a little bit better angle to get down in there. So I take the little attachment spring out, and instead of attaching it all the way across, I just attach it to the end. That way I can get a good grip on that spring. I got a minimum clearance here without having to go buy an expensive pair of pliers. Snap ring just slides on over the top. Once it's down in place, just like that. You'll notice I was holding the other end of the shaft to keep pressure on it so that it would seat all the way down into the groove. That way we know it's properly engaged. Once that's done, you should virtually have no slop on the shaft, but it should still spin freely. Okay? Now the next thing we throw in is the thrower. Slides down in, just sits down on top right there. Then we've got our pancake bearing goes in. Doesn't really matter which way this goes in, but this one is a little bit odd and compared to some of the other ones. Sometimes these will come apart. Luckily in this case, this one stayed together, is in really good shape. The other thing again, a little bit of lube. Go ahead and throw it on that surface. Just kind of help it act like a glue. That way once that bearing is seated into place, it's not going to move on you. All right, now we're ready for the planetary. As we said, this is a 4R44E. You can tell it's the 44 because it only has 4 planetaries and 2 open spots. If it was a 4R55, it would have all 6 planetaries. In this case, it's just the 44. Already gone through, inspected it, made sure everything was in good shape. So that just slides down. And once you get it engaged, slides down in the top. Alright, so we've gone ahead, gotten it off the table now, put it on our transmission holder. I like to use one that I just mount onto an engine stand so I don't have to have a whole nother separate piece of equipment. Then whenever I'm not doing a transmission, I can just unbolt that and have my engine stand. So with this gear, planetary, a lot of times you're going to fight the gravity where it's going to want to hold that other piece down so that you can't get the snap ring in. So once you get that everything together, get that dropped in, slides down into place. You need to get you a real nice little 90-degree dental pick tool. I like to have this one. It's got a little bit longer shaft on it. And then I can set the snap ring down into place. Go ahead and grab my screwdriver so that I'm ready to start on it. But then I want to hook that gear in the groove. Then I can pull the slack I need to start engaging that snap ring. Okay? Because that snap ring and that gear doesn't want to stay together. And you just have to kind of work it around to get it to stay in. And then once you get it going, then you just kind of step your way around with your flathead screwdrivers. There it goes. It finally snapped all the way in. Now it's cradled all the way into place. Often a little bit of a pain. Some of them have a little more play in them. but otherwise that's what you're looking for. Get your engagement. All right, now that we've got that into place, now we can go ahead and drop in the next piece. Again, got a little bearing on it. We're just going to take a little extra trans lube, put it on that surface to make sure it stays in place nicely. Slide it down, get it to sit. You'll feel it kind of cradles in. And then I like to throw a little bit extra trans lube on any of the surfaces where a bearing's going to mate at. Doesn't hurt to throw a little bit on the gears too. Then we can drop that down in, get it to engage. Now you're engaged all the way into the planetary. Now your second planetary goes in. This one's going to drop down in from the top. Just like so. All right. You'll notice I spin it one way, the outer shell spins the opposite direction. Okay. All right. Now to set the next bearing, next gear in. Got another sandwich bearing. Just go ahead and put a little bit of lube on the surface where that bearing rides, which is right there on top of that gear. Drop that bearing down, get it pretty much centered. Then you've got this one, the mating surface of it. Now, that one looks to be mostly centered, but in order to make sure, what we'll do is we'll lift it out. We'll actually drop it down into here, and again with that lube on there, makes a nice stick. The other thing a lot of people will forget is this brass bushing that goes on here. Make sure you get that brass bushing reinstalled on here. A lot of people will forget that when they do their disassembly, and it won't go back in. There you go. All right, now we're ready to drop the clutch pack back in. Already got the snap ring and the stack all put together on this one. Bearing rides right here on top. Now, what I will tell you, this one with all these small teeth on these clutch plates, they can be a little bit of a fight to get them to engage all the way, but you've got to get them all the way down. So just get it there, and you'll feel it start dropping into place as you go. There we go. That felt like full engagement. Yep, should be all the way down. All right. Next clutch pack, not going to go through it. I've already showed you a couple of times now. Snap rings into place against the pressure plate. You're always just making sure that your gaps, your clearances are correct on it. And then this piece just comes up, drops down on top, and come on, drop all the way down. There you go. Keep going. There it goes. Once that one cradles all the way down, if the camera guy can get a view down the side where my screwdriver's at, right down there, they should engage all the way together to where they lock in. That's how you know you're all the way down on that one. All right, now we're ready to get the first band installed on the top side. As I said, I keep everything soaked. I already had all my clutch discs, but I've had my band soaking last night. So go ahead and lift that band out and ease it over and just set it down there for right now. Try not to make too much of a mess on the floor. All right, so the band's just going to turn down this way, drop it down into place, just kind of let it sit there just like that. All right, now this part is going to go together like so, and then down inside it's going to sit like that, and it's going to engage the band from this side. So that's how it needs to look once it's installed, but there is a little bit of a trick to getting it all put in. So you come from the back side, get the anchor brought around, There we go. Now that's mostly in place. Then you take the arm, come in from the back side. Reach in there, push that band over. Come on. There it goes. Just trying to get it lined up. A little bit of a challenge sometimes. And then on the other side, got your other anchor and your adjustment for the band. So that comes in from the side. Bring it around. And then if you come back here on this side, you can look in and see where it comes through for the engagement. And then once you get it cradled into place, just push it in a little bit. We're not trying to lock it into place right now. We're just trying to get it generally into position. Okay? We'll worry about the adjustments later. But for the time being, if you look down inside, just to show you how the adjustment works, you can see how it takes the pressure off the band when you back it out. And then as you push the band in, it applies pressure to it to hold it into place. But what we need to do, we're going to leave it about right there for right now, because once everything's going, then the piston from the other side will engage to lock it down, and we'll do the adjustments later. All right, now that we've got that, now we can go ahead, set this bearing in, set this piece in. Just remember, we got to line up our screw hole back here. Just like so. Now with this nut, we're not really worried about torquing it down. Just needs to be good and snug. It's a small bolt. If you really want to put a torque on it, somewhere maybe 60 to 70 inch-pounds, but it doesn't need to be super tight. All right, once that's done, next thing we're going to put in is this band, the snap ring. With this snap ring, if you look at it from the edge right here, you'll notice that the back side is flat, this side is beveled. Always remember the beveled edge right here goes up facing the bell housing, so it's going to go in this way. And the other thing you want to make sure of, where your wire comes through, you want to make sure that you're not in the way of it. So when I put this in, I always kind of bring it down this way, leave that gap around the side there. Need to get her to cradle all the way in. Let's make sure we didn't hold anything up with the screw here real quick. There it goes. Make sure that gets cradled all the way down into place. Bingo. Alright, now that we've got that in, next thing we want to put in is the speed sensor. So the speed sensor, go ahead and take the screw out, run the wire through first, and then you can drop the speed sensor down into place. One thing I tell people on these speed sensors, they don't always fail. They don't fail often, not all the time. By any means, they're not problematic. But if you're already rebuilding the transmission, if that speed sensor fails because you reused an old one, you're going to have to tear the whole thing back apart in order to get back in there to replace that one part again. So anytime you're rebuilding a transmission, always replace that input speed sensor. Save yourself that headache of having to deal with it again later if it fails. Alright, that input speed sensor does have a torque rating on it. The torque rating is 71 to 87 inch-pounds. So we get it on inch-pounds. We're just going to set it on 84. Good number right in the center. There we go. Doesn't take a whole lot on those. Again, not a real big heavy bolt by any means. Alright, now that we've got that in, next thing we're going to drop in, next gear set. Again, I put the bearing on the back. I've already put the lubricant, the trans lube on it so it stays in place and it doesn't move. But that way you can see that it's there. That shaft should just drop in. Once it drops in, there it goes, cradled all the way down. Should still have good free movement, and you should be able to feel the shaft coming on the output side. If I spin it this way, I feel the output shaft turn. If I spin this way, I don't. That's fine, it's the way it should be, as long as you're getting that output side to spin. All right. Next thing that goes in, this assembly right here. Leave that gear there for a second. This one has a bearing sitting on it right here, and I've already put the stuff on it, but trying to get it to raise up just so you can kind of see it. Thin bearing, needle bearing, has a tendency to lose needles out of it. Likewise the one around here, but I've already got them all lubricated up. So this one's going to drop down and engage just like so. All right, next thing we drop in, this gear. Let's go ahead and drop it down into place, and then you can drop that one, get it to seat. It sits all the way down in just like so. Alright, next clutch pack is going to be engaged. Remember, again, snap rings, I've already done the stack. Just to show you the snap ring, just pops in. Once you get ready to set this in, these teeth right here, raised and lowered, are going to have to engage with that gear once it's down into place. So you want to make sure that you feel it bottom out all the way down in. So just set it on. There it is. You feel that or hear that last clunk, I'll raise it up, get it off. You can also see the gap here where it's not engaged. But then if you just rotate it around, slow, get that last clunk, get it seated all the way down in there. Once you've got that in, you're ready for the next band installment. We'll go ahead and pull that band out of the transmission fluid. Just set it in there. Alright, now we're ready to install the next anchor. So this one's going to slide together just like so. Slides up in. Get it to come all the way through. Go ahead and drop that pin down into place. All right. Now with this one, I like to bring this anchor in from the top. Grab it with my long needle nose. Oop, wrong spot. Bring it down, get it engaged, and then once I get that part engaged, I can bring the band around, get the band to apply some pressure onto it. And then it usually stays pretty much in place. All right, next anchor goes in. We're just going to go ahead and get this adjustment started just a little bit. All right, and then use the pliers to hold the anchor, get the band to come around. Gotta raise up just a little bit, get the rest of it slacked out. There it goes. And then once it's engaged, then you can come back around to the back side again, just like we did before. You can look in through the back right here, and you can see when the adjustment comes in, starts to apply pressure onto the band. All right, the other thing, speed sensor wire that you saw us put in, we're just going to leave it hang out this backside for right now. Make sure that if you're moving the transmission around or setting it down somewhere, you don't damage that wire. It'll stick into the plug here in just a little bit. Come back up. Make sure we've got plenty of adjustment on the band. Goes all the way down, locks, but we don't want it locked for right now. We'll adjust the bands out later, so back it off just a little bit. Leave a little bit of slack there. All right. Now we're ready to assemble the pump and get ready to drop the pump into place. So bring our pump over, gears, and our pump plate. Now the pump has this bushing on it right here. As you can see, I've already got it good and lubricated up, so it stays in place once I flip this over. I've also already checked all of my needle bearings, and I've also replaced, as you can see, those little seals right there. So we just go ahead and flip that over. Then on the pump gears, you got 2 gears, little dot. Always just make sure I get the dot down. Drop the gear in place. The one thing you want to make sure of on that gear when you get ready to put it together, just make sure that everything's lined up and it can freely move inside. Nothing's binding it up before we go and put the plate on. And then we can go ahead, take the plate, drop the plate down into place. Where's the screw holes? Get the screw holes lined up, get them lined up from the top, and what I like to do is I'll go ahead, slide 2 of the screws through just to hold it into place. Okay? Guess I could have brought the belt housing over first. Like I said, get 2 of those screws into place so that it holds together, keeps your alignment correct. And then once you get up here, you can look and see the spacing, and then you've got these 2 that are really close together and offset. That's going to be these 2 screws right here. get those 2 screws, get the alignment going in. You can also look at the outside holes. They should also line up with the exterior holes. And then you can set it down, and then those can start into place. I've already got my paper gasket setting on here. Go ahead and get those dropped in. Now I am going to run them down a little bit with the impact, but I'm not going to put any pressure on them. I'm just going to run them down until they touch. Now we're ready to go ahead and get these torqued. So the torque rating on these are 16 to 21 foot-pounds. So we'll get our wrench turned on. Foot-pounds. It says 16 to 21. So we're just going to go up around, let's say 18 and a half. Close enough. And then if we can get a hand from our camera guy to help us hold this from turning while he's filming. In case y'all didn't know, he is a hand model in his spare time. Alright, when you're putting the shaft in, just know it is a keyed a little bit. So sometimes you got to play with it to get it to drop all the way down. Because if you come up, rotate just a little bit, it doesn't want to drop all the way into place. You got to get it to where it's just at the right spline alignment, get it to drop in. Now you're ready to drop the bell housing with the pump in place. Just remember, starter nod goes right over here on this side. So when you come up, set down nice and easy. On your bell housing bolts, remember we talked about on disassemblies, got these little O-rings. Make sure you put your new O-rings in here before you put these in. Just go ahead and get them all in, get them started. These are a 17 millimeter. I'm just going to ease them down, still on the #1 setting, so I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on them. I'll tighten them with the torque wrench. All right, now that we got them down in there, go ahead and get our torque wrench back. Now for the bell housing bolts, these are going to be the same as the tail housing, which is 27 to 38 foot-pounds. So we'll bring it back up, and we're going to run it up to 32 foot-pounds. Then on these, I like to make sure I've gone further around than just the start to make sure that there wasn't any misalignment as it was going down. And then we're good to go. Next thing I want to show you, putting in this plug. This is the plug that ties in back to your harness for your control of the transmission, your shifting of your gears. So this plug's got a couple of new O-rings on it, nice and lubed up as you can see. And then the snap ring, just come from this side, slide it in. Make sure you're keeping an eye on those O-rings that you don't pinch one as you go through. It should slide all the way through and into place. And then this snap ring just sits in a groove, snaps into place. Now you're done with that. And then when we talked about having this plug from the speed sensor plugs right here into this slot. So just get it to come around. Oh, make sure. Oh, this way. It is a keyed plug, so it should make it to where you can only plug it in one way. There it goes. Make sure it's nice and bottomed. Not pushing on the wire, but pushing on the little tabs. The rest of this we'll put together whenever it's time to do the valve body on it. But for right now, that's as far as we're going to go. We do have shift linkages and the shift position, which we'll put on, like I said, later when we start going through the adjustments of the bands and everything. Some of these videos can get long, so we just wanted to put a general assembly together of everything inside. In the meantime, if you have any questions again on the tools I use, techniques I'm using, any of the specs that I'm using, pulling from, I do pull my information for Torx from ASTG. It's a great resource for transmissions. And in the meantime, this is Everyday Mechanic and Fabrication saying thanks for watching. If it helped you out, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Make sure you turn on the notifications, know when the new videos come out. Until the next time, thanks.